Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm righting a wrong. In the first video against Gotham, I added pawns, but many of you commented I should have played with the rooks because of a very popular meme. So today, I'm revisiting the challenge and finding out how many rooks I need to beat YouTube's chess teacher. The rating difference is at least close enough that I will play the first game even, so let's start with d4. All right, we get knight to f6, so we'll play our regular old London, just trying to keep things solid. We get d5, we'll continue with e3. And we're met with bishop to g4, which is an interesting way to play this. I'll meet it with knight to f3 since I still hope to put my bishop on d3 eventually. We're met with queen to d7, which I don't fully understand, so I'll just continue my development. We get knight to c6, and whenever I see this move or c5, I always play c3 against the knight so that it stops knight to b4. So I play c3 here. And we get knight to h5. I'm not interested in losing this bishop quite yet, so I'll play bishop to g5 to get it out of the way. And we're met with h6, a very natural move, kicking the bishop back to h4. Very nice. We get bishop to f5, and the idea of this move is to stop me from developing where I'd like to, which is bishop to d3. But I notice that it leaves the knight kind of exposed to my queen, so it leaves interesting moves like knight to e5 on the table. I'm very tempted to play that. Knight to e5. It hits the queen and it hits the knight, so he has to respond to that, probably with captures. We recapture, and it's unclear where this knight will retreat to because all of these squares will be unsafe. So he probably has to defend it with bishop to g6, or maybe a pawn move forward, something like that. And I'm quite comfortable with that. So we'll play knight to e5. We're met with captures as expected, so we'll recapture. And there it is. Pawn to g6 defends the knight on h5, but it's also a little bit of an awkward move. I'll double down on the pressure by playing bishop to e2. So I have a battery now looking at the knight. And we're met with bishop to e6, which as far as I can tell, didn't do anything about the knight. I was kind of anticipating knight back to g7, kind of stuffing up the bishop, and the knight is quite awkwardly placed there, probably has to reroute to e6. But he ignores it altogether, and I don't see any reason not to take this knight. So I'll go ahead and take it. He plays the only move, really, which is to recapture, and I will not take this pawn, because that is met by bishop to g4, and my queen will be trapped. That's a super sneaky move. I didn't see that. Well, I did, but lucky that I saw it one turn before I was going to capture that pawn. In that case, I'll continue with knight to f3. I'm not sure where I want to castle yet, because there's an open file now this way, but at the same time, castling long against the engine is always a little bit sketchy. So I'll play knight to f3, defends the weak pawn on e5, so in the case of something like bishop to g7, we're protected, and we're met with c5. I'll simply play queen to d2, a bit of a neutral move, and I leave myself the option to castle long or short in some future. We do get rook to g8, which cements that he will not be able to castle kingside. He targets my g2 pawn, which I have to defend, and I really don't want to defend it by castling short because I'm not happy about bishop to h3. I could play bishop to g3, but it's a little bit of an uncomfortable position to play. Bishop drops back to g2, removes the knight. Bishop to g7 comes and hits the pawn. He's looking for h4 at some point. So it doesn't look that great to play. Instead, I'll just defend it with my rook. He does castle long, and we'll follow suit. He does this kind of prophylactic shuffle, king to b8, getting the king off this quote-unquote weak diagonal, although it's not weak yet. But this is still a very common motif. And I'm going to reroute my bishop to g3, put it on the same diagonal as the king, and give it a little bit more scope, since on h4 it's really just staring at the e7 pawn. With this move, we also cover up the g2 pawn, so it's not directly under attack anymore. I'd like to get this pawn push in at some point so I can undouble my pawns, but I'm not ready for that quite yet. So I'm thinking I should play queen to c2 so that this pawn is pinned to the queen and I can push pawn to e4 next. So I'll follow through with that, queen to c2. We're met with queen to c6, which makes sense, gets the queen off the pin. And now we'll pivot a little bit and play knight to h4, looking for knight to f5, and maybe I can get rid of this bishop pair, either by him trading or by creating my own trade. So I'll play knight to h4. We get queen to c7, which also makes sense, puts pressure on the e5 pawn by the bishop and the queen. So now if I play knight to f5, he can just use that tempo to capture my pawn. And unfortunately, something like knight to f5 takes, and then taking this pawn wouldn't work because my knight would basically be trapped. He'd just have to attack it. The other option is to play f4, but I'm really unhappy about that because my bishop becomes basically another pawn. So it doesn't seem like I have much of a choice. I'll retreat my knight to f3. And he plays queen to a5, hitting the a2 pawn. This is actually super interesting because if I play king to b1, he has d4 with a discovered attack on my a2 pawn. So instead, I'll push a3 to defend the pawn. We're met with queen to b5, which I won't deny I don't completely understand. And now that this pawn is protected and this rook is redundant on this square, I'll take the time to play rook to d2 and double up my rooks. We get rook to e8, which I really don't understand. And I'll go ahead and just double my rooks since I've been given the opportunity to do so. Okay, we get queen to c4. So far, these last three engine moves, I have no idea what they're for. Feels like I can play knight to h4 now comfortably. If he plays queen to g4, I just have h3 kicking the queen. Queen back to g5, looks pretty uncomfortable for the queen. Knight to f3, looks good for me, so I'll play that. Knight to h4. And we're met with queen to a2. That should have been a lot more obvious to me than it was. We do still have queen to b1. I mean, it's not a mating threat. It's a queen all by herself. I can't play knight to f5 now, however, because we get check, here, takes, and then the knight is just hanging. So I'll play queen to b1 instead and offer that queen trade, see what he does about that. We do get the queen trade, which I'm happy to accept. You guys can't see the bot, but he says that he doesn't need his queen anymore, so we'll see about that. Rook to c8 definitely doesn't make me want to put my king back on the c-file in case we get any sort of d4 breaks. A recapture with the c-pawn could be discovered check. This knight is misplaced now for sure, so I'll probably reroute it to f1 and then figure out where to put it from there. Although I don't really like bishop to f5 check. I'll play king to a1 instead just to lose this tempo, so that if he ever moves this bishop, I have e6 with discovered check picking up the f7 pawn. So I'll play king to a1. Whoa, b5 is extremely aggressive, especially for somebody with a pawn for a bishop and another bishop staring into a protected pawn. And that's a lot of trash talk from an 1800, but we do get b5, which is aggressive. And I think it's time to reroute this knight. This knight is misplaced at this point. So we'll play knight to f3, bringing it back to the center. That's interesting. Bishop to h8 is not rerouting the bishop. I guess it's looking down with the rook, anticipating my own bishop move, which I can't do anymore because he would take my pawn. Although there's not a lot of depth to that, I don't really think. I could play h4 here and just kind of hold up the entire king side. I'll play h4 just to hold up the king side and make sure that these pawns remain weaknesses and there's no funny h4 pushes later. So I'll play h4. We do get king to b7, so now the bishop can move out of the way without this discovered check, but he would still drop the d5 pawn, which doesn't look great for him. To be honest, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do in this position. I'm not sure what progress I'm supposed to make. I feel like the position is sort of at a standstill. Although I could definitely see him making progress with like f6, opening up the bishop, ideas of b4. I can see how he might make progress in this position, but I'm not sure how I'm supposed to make progress. I'm not even happy about my king being on the queen side anymore with both of these bishops in some future being able to look into my position. I'll play knight to e1 with the idea of rerouting the knight to d3 and then f4. And then at least I'm looking at two different weaknesses, because right now I'm just overprotecting a pawn that already has a defender. So I'll play knight to e1. We do get f6 as unfortunately predicted. We can undouble our pawns, so we might as well do it with a tempo. He recaptures, and we'll play knight to d3 as planned. We get a pawn push in the middle, which is pretty well defended. And let me calculate which way I should capture, if I should capture at all. Although I don't really have a choice because this is incoming. Takes, and then a fork on my king and my rook. So I probably have to capture, with this pawn at least. The other option is to sacrifice the knight with check, the rook recaptures, and then I take here, which I'm kind of tempted to do because it just frees my position a lot from his pressure. I'm kind of liking takes, just because it opens up my rooks that are already doubled, and his rooks aren't all that well mobilized. I'm not excited about opening up the center when there's 2 bishops on the board, and I don't have my own 2 bishops, but I think it's my best shot is to open up some lines. So I'll capture here first. We'll recapture. And he doesn't take at all, actually. He leaves the bishop on f6 because he knows that this pawn is a weakness. I wonder if I can play check here. Check, if he moves towards the middle, I'll line up my rook, maybe for a discovered attack. If he stays on the side, maybe I can get check and get rid of one of his bishops. That could be good. This pawn is as good as gone because there's no way I'm bringing a rook over to defend it, and I can't push f3 because that drops the g3 bishop. So I need to start looking for my own counterplay, which is why I'm calculating knight to c5 check. I do quite like that move. I'll play knight to c5 check. He says, you're just going to attack my king, no dinner first? That's pretty funny. I have the option to play rook to c1, and he can't actually shuffle out of the way without just moving back, basically. But I also have the option to play knight to d3 and then reroute to e5, now that the king is in the middle. I like rook to c1 better, and we're not at risk of a skewer because the square is covered by my pawn. So I'll play rook to c1. He does pick up the pawn. He's not, this is some engine play. He's not afraid at all of this discovered attack. No fear whatsoever. I would like to punish that somehow. I just have to figure out how. I don't think moving the knight right now is the way to go. I think it's a little bit premature because I don't have anything to attack. But what I could do is play something like rook to e2, looking for rook to e6 now that the bishop isn't defending that. And if I play here, bishop comes back. I'm not sure what the follow-up is, but I think it's my best shot. So I'll play rook to e2. The bishop does come back as expected. And I really like the position of this knight. In fact, I think letting this knight go anywhere is uncalled for. Instead, I have to think about holding on to this pawn. So maybe I can play bishop to e5 and trade this basically inactive bishop for this bishop that's putting a lot of pressure on my position. I might just lose the pawn, but it might be worth it to centralize my pieces and look for some kind of counterplay. So I'll play bishop to e5. He plays bishop to c4, an intermediate move, attacking my rook. I could move my rook out of the way and actually defend this pawn in the process, which I quite like. So I could play rook to e4 and defend this pawn. And I don't see any issue with that. So I'll play exactly that, rook to e4. And we're offered a rook trade. And I'm sure that this capture and his recapture cannot be that good for me positionally. f3 could be interesting. Takes, recapture. Oh no, but then he just takes, and I even drop the knight in the way. So that doesn't work. I could double my rooks as well. Activate all of my pieces. Takes, I just recapture with my own rook. I think that's probably my best shot, so I'll do that. I'll double my rooks. He captures, we'll recapture. Bishop to d5, hits the rook. Have to move the rook. And I can't actually move the rook off the e-file because he's actually defending this bishop. If I move the rook, say, to f4, he takes, and then picks up the free knight. So I don't really have many choices. I guess I'll move to e1 so that in some future he can't play here, and just mate me. So I'll play rook to e1. He does take the free pawn, which is pretty unfortunate. We can't even play rook to h1 and hit a skewer because of this bishop. I'll play bishop to g3 in hopes that takes. Maybe this pawn can hold on to these 2 pawns, and maybe I'll have enough counterplay. Let's try that. Bishop to g3. Okay, he doesn't even capture because he probably realizes that it's not beneficial to him. So I'll offer the trade again, see if I can force it to happen. Okay, he's really not interested. He just pushes the h-pawn. If I take, he takes. Rook e3 barely catches the pawn. Bishop g2 forces the matter. Check, king here, takes, h3. Honestly, looks pretty losing, but I don't know that I have anything better. So I'll do that. I'll take. I'll catch the pawn here with rook to e3. Oh, he doesn't even play bishop g2. He plays rook to g8. Obviously threatening checkmate, cover, and then mate. So I have to get my king out of here or defend e1. And I think I'd rather move my king altogether, so I'll play king to b1. We get rook to g2, hitting the f2 pawn now. My position is coming down like a house of cards. We'll play f4. YOLO, try to hold on to the pawn. We're met with rook to d2. He just hits this pawn from behind now. Don't have any way to defend it. Maybe knight to d3. I don't want to trade rooks with rook to d3 because that's completely losing. Pawn gets away. If I play knight to d3, he'll probably push f5 and nail me here with the bishop. It's not great. Or I guess he could just play bishop to c4 right away. Check. I can try knight to d3. Yeah, we get bishop to c4. We'll hit the check. We get king to d6. We could play rook to h3 and just catch this pawn. He takes and I take the h4 pawn. Doesn't look that bad, so we'll play rook to h3. Okay. He just kicks the knight. He doesn't even let me hang out there for a little while. a5, I basically can only play knight to c2. Knight to c2 runs into checkmate. So I guess knight to a2 runs into check here, takes the knight. Knight to a6 looks like the only option. So I guess we'll play that, question mark. There's the check. We'll play king to c2. He picks up the pawn. We'll pick up a pawn. Bishop d5 with some deep tactic probably that I'm not seeing right now. So instead, I'll just pick up another pawn. Okay, he picks up f4. This knight is running out of spaces to live. I guess we still have knight to b8, barely. So we'll play... Oh, I can't even do that. I was going to say rook to h7, so maybe I can get some kind of interesting check going on. Maybe get the knight out through d7. But rook to h7 just loses to bishop e4. b4 barely works maybe. Takes. This is a weakness now, but at least it's on a dark square, so it's not the same color as the bishop. And maybe I can get my knight out. I'll give that a try, b4. We do get check. We'll move the king up. Another check. We'll move back down. Are we going to get checked here now? Yeah, we sure are. If I move here, discovered attack, I lose the rook. If I move here, I drop this pawn. So I guess I'll move here. It's the lesser of two evils. Maybe I can pick up this pawn. Okay. Can I take this with check? Or should I take here first? Let's see. Takes with check, move. I move back. Looks okay, I guess. If I take here with check first, move, rook back, takes, I recapture with the knight. Also looks okay. Both look like they're probably going to lose to an engine. So I'll take here with check first. He moves the king back, which doesn't seem right. Seems like I can just move and keep his king cut off forever. So I'll try that, rook to h6. We get checked and we'll just move our king up. Oh, that makes perfect sense. He'd much rather have a protected pass pawn than commit to any trades that could leave us in a position where maybe I can finagle a draw. But I'll still try to give him my best. Maybe I can play knight to c7, hit these two pieces at the same time. We'll probably get bishop to c4. Maybe rook to h5, hitting this pawn. Maybe my king can do something about this passed pawn. We'll give that a try, knight to c7, see what happens. We get bishop to c4, basically as expected. We will hit this pawn, which he gives up. If I take it with the rook, rook c2 takes the knight. So I have to take it with my own knight. a3 doesn't work because I pick this up. So knight to b5, a3, check, king here. That looks good. That looks fine. Okay, I'll take. We do get check. Do I want king to d4 or king to d3? How defensive am I playing now? I have a passed pawn too. We're 65 moves deep. This is not a light game by any means. I think king to d3 makes more sense because at least we're hanging on to the rook so he can't just move his bishop away. And obviously a3 doesn't work because the knight picks it up. So I'll play king to d3. I don't like having all my pieces on light squares when that's precisely the bishop he has, but I think it's my best shot. So I'll play king to d3. We get rook to g2. I'm going to be so excited to look at the game review after this, which a lot of you guys have been asking for, so I will start adding them in the videos. And if enough of you say that the videos are like way too long, then maybe I'll get rid of them. But for now, they'll be in the videos. We get rook to g2. And I wonder if this is drawn or if I'm completely losing or I don't know. I don't know what it is. I kind of just want to play king back to c3. If you play check, I move here, check. Oh, I can't move here because of mate. But I guess I just move back. So I'll do that, king to c3. And he's going to have to prove to me how he's winning here. We get checked again, we'll shuffle back. Engine rarely takes a draw, so I don't expect it here, right? We get rook to c1. I wonder if knight to d4 is enough. Knight to d4 hits the bishop, obviously. I'm looking for a trade. And maybe I can line my rook up behind the pawn. I mean, he's cut off my king, but I could just play king to d2 as well. So I'll play that. I mean, I'm gonna make him work for it. King d2, rook c4. I don't want to lose my own pawn either. I guess he could have played that anyways. I'm not sure why he didn't. I could also play rook to c5 and start offering a rook trade already. If he takes, I take. That's definitely a draw. I'll do that. I'll offer a rook trade myself. Okay, which he doesn't accept. I can just shuffle back to c3 now. Check, I shuffle back, still in the same position. So let's see, king to c3. Bishop back to e6. I still have to be careful because there's still like some weird mating ideas that I have to watch out for. And I definitely can't let this pawn get away. What about knight to a3? Is that a bad move? Because the knight is on the corner, but it stops this pawn and maybe I can push my own pawn forward. I kind of like that idea. I also like knight to d4, trying to trade off the bishop for the knight. Because that would solve a lot of my problems. Then I can just line my rook up, target this pawn, and I might even be better at that point. Let's see, knight to d4. a3 would be the only real concern. Rook here. Pawn to a2, I just take, and then he drops the pawn. If he defends it with the rook, I take anyways, and then I just target this pawn. That looks really good. Knight to d4, I guess he'd have to move his bishop. Then still rook to a5. Bishop e8, b5. I'm definitely playing that. Let's do knight to d4. We get a3, so we'll play rook to a5. How did I not calculate that? a2. I guess I have to play here now. Oh, that's so bad. Right. If I take, he's just going to push a1 and queen. Takes, knight back. I should be able to hold on to that. I mean, that would really suck if I can't, but I didn't calculate it, so it's taking me by surprise. We'll see what happens. I take, he queens, I sack the rook, insert the meme now. The rook! I can't believe we actually got it. Okay, we'll play knight back to c5. It's the only move that makes sense. Or maybe knight back to d4. I guess I'm just trying to hold on to the position at this point. Can I offer draw? Maybe take draw. He'll be like, no, my rating. I can't lose so many rating points. Because I know this is at least a draw. There's no way I'm losing here. I just have to move the knight out of the way and not like royally screw up. But I also don't want to draw to the 50 move rule. That would be kind of dumb. But if I'm being honest, I don't remember how I'm supposed to draw this. Let's play knight to d4. He threatens the knight, quote unquote. We'll play king to c4. And if I can just push this pawn without losing it, that's a win in my book. Let's play knight to b1 and stop rook to c1 check. Okay, maybe we can give check. We could also give check this way, but I don't want him to get in front of the pawn before I can check him with my knight. So I'll check him with my knight instead. Okay, he plays king to b6. I'll play back. Gotham, if I have to 50 move rule you, I will in a heartbeat. I won't even think about it. Finally, it happened. He sacrificed the rook. This is a draw now, guaranteed. I recapture. And we drew against Gotham. Even Steven. He says, I'm happy with a draw from that position. Would you like to play again? Let me tell you something. I'm happy with a draw from that position because I'm pretty sure I was losing. All right, as promised, we'll do a game review as soon as it finishes analyzing the game. And I'm calling that a win because that game took 125 moves. I promise you guys at some point I'll come back and revisit the rook challenge, but that game was extremely long, and we did get a rook sacrifice anyways. So in my book, that counts, and a draw for me against a 2500 bot, that's a win in my book. So we'll wait for this analysis, and then we'll look at the game review. All right, we're back with the game review, and honestly, I'm pleasantly surprised. Apparently, we played at 85% accuracy. We only had one great move, And apparently we made a lot of mistakes, but so did the bot. In fact, the bot had a blunder at some point. And you can see from the game review that we were, for all practical purposes, even for a really long time. Then I was completely losing at one point. What is this, like -2 or 3 or something? And then we slowly crawled our way back up from the trenches to a draw. And then here we're slightly worse according to engine eval, but this is all basically a draw, guaranteed. All right, so let's run through this quickly. Obviously, we're playing the London system in the beginning. Queen to d7, it says, is a mistake, which is fine, I guess. I mean, I don't think either of us necessarily misplayed the opening. Everything we played was relatively sound. We do get bishop to f5, which it makes a good point. Moving the same piece twice in the opening typically isn't recommended, but I thought it was pretty challenging because it stops a pretty basic idea in the London system. Knight to e5 was apparently a mistake. You should focus on development. The best move was apparently bishop to b5, capitalizing on this basically double royal pin with future ideas of knight to e5 probably. So knight to e5 itself wasn't the way to play it. Capturing was apparently a great move, even though, we did the calculation based on this hanging knight. It was the only move, but sure. We recapture. G6 is a mistake. I guess g5 counterattacking my bishop is what it wanted. That way, instead of actually paying attention to the fact that the knight was hanging, it could pick up a piece of its own. This was all good and well. Bishop to e6 was apparently a missed opportunity. Not apparently. We commented this on the game. Knight to g7 would have been better. We take, which is apparently a miss, which we also noticed in the game that if we recapture, bishop g4 loses the queen. Queen to d2 was a mistake. I love how it's suggesting that I should castle kingside, and I have no doubt that engine has good reasons to say that. Probably the fact that the bishops can't really point to the king side, but for me, playing against an engine, or frankly, playing against a human, I would never castle my king directly into a semi-open file, especially when there's ideas of bishop to h3, sacking the bishop and dropping the queen in there too. And that's just my opinion. Obviously, the engine can think, 20 million positions a second. I cannot, so I can't take that risk. We get rook to g8, which is best. Rook to g1 is not best. It probably wanted me to castle into it, which is a hard sell for me. It's a hard sell. We get long castles. King to b8. Bishop back. We're both finishing development. Queen to c2 was apparently best. Yippee. Knight to h4 was fine. Queen to c7 was not the right idea. These moves are all pretty logical. Rook to d2 goes to double the rook. I did mention that this was a funky looking move that didn't make a lot of sense. Doubling our rooks it didn't like, but again, for me as a human, it just makes the most sense. And this is the only thing with engine analysis, is that it's all fine and well to use the engine to correct very obvious mistakes, but when you're making positionally decent moves, it's give or take on whether or not you should read into the 40 move deep evaluation that the engine did. If you played a positionally sound move, it's not going to hurt you to play that against a human in the future. We get queen to c4, which I definitely missed, was looking for queen to a2. Knight to h4 is fine. Queen to a2. Queen b1 offers the queen trade. He shouldn't have traded, apparently. We take, forced. Rook to c8, again, not sure what the idea was, and engine agrees it was a mistake. And king to a1 was a missed opportunity to win a pawn. I have to see where that is. Where's my free pawn? No, not for his move, silly. Where's my free pawn? King to a1 was a mistake. Where's my free pawn? f4? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I think I even mentioned not wanting to play f4 in the game because it would basically turn my bishop into a pawn. Maybe that's the pawn the engine is talking about. But no, that's a joke. Obviously, it's looking for f5, and e6 is very scary with that discovered check. So definitely didn't see that idea. Instead, we shuffled our king over. We get b5, which is dubious. Knight to f3, which lost the advantage, right, because we missed this idea, which makes a lot of sense. That I do agree with. That makes sense. Bishop to h8. Again, I even mentioned in game it looks a little bit funky. h4 is a missed opportunity. I'm very curious to see what that missed opportunity is. Knight to h, yeah, knight to h4. Put the knight back, you goofball, and play f4, f5, which is what you should have played in the first place. Okay, got it, bud. I got it. King to b7, knight to e1. Apparently, we're already losing here with this knight maneuver. f6 is a mistake, and I thought it made a lot of sense. I wonder what it thought was the best move. Yeah, for sure. Quadruple pawn, because why not? Just quadruple your pawns, obviously. It's one of the first things you learn in chess. Don't forget to quadruple your pawns. f6 I thought made a lot of sense, trying to look for some scope for the bishop, but Engine disagrees. Takes. Knight to d3 was apparently great. After all of those terrible knight moves, d3 was apparently good. You found the only move in the position. Good thinking. You're showering me in compliments. I like this spot. This move puts your knight into a stronger, more active position. I agree. d4 is apparently a mistake. This misses an opportunity to increase a bishop's scope by moving it to a better square. I wonder what that was. Bishop f5? Yeah, bishop to f5. I guess that makes sense. Bishop f5 looking into nothing. For a human, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess Engine thinks it makes perfect sense. We get d4. Takes, and of course the best move. We play knight to c5, and I just realized knight to f4 was an interesting option. Defends the pawn, attacks the bishop, hits this pawn. But I guess it likes knight to c5 as well. King to c6. We get rook to c1. This was apparently a mistake, and this was a missed win? Apparently bishop takes g2 puts me at +2, so there's probably something with this discovered attack that I missed. No, I don't care about his best move. Show me my best move. Rook to e2 was a missed win. What was the best move? d5 check? For me, I wouldn't even consider this move because it destabilizes the knight, opens up this bishop, and it loses a pawn. King b6, knight d7. You've got to be, that is, that's so deep. I can't even begin to explain. You know what? We tried. Rook to e true. We tried to make the best move, and it is what it is. Bishop to d5. Bishop to e5, it didn't like. You left your pawn hanging. That I did. I was looking for a counterplay. And bishop to c4 obviously overlooks the pawn. Rook to e4 defends the pawn. Rook to g4 attempts to intercept it. Allows me to win a bishop? Okay, wait a minute. We had winning opportunities here? No, I don't care about his move. What's my best move? Okay, show me my best move. Win a bishop. Takes? This wins a bishop? How does this win a bishop? Takes. Where is it? Show me the moves. Takes. b3. Okay, at some point there, he wasn't able to move this bishop. Right here, he played f5. We reacted. He took. And he doesn't want to move the bishop for a reason unknown to me. I don't see why he wouldn't just move the bishop out of the way. I don't see check here. Whoops. Check. Whoops. Bishop here. King, knight here. Check. Defends the rook. Looks fine. Somebody comment down below the obvious tactic that I'm missing here. He moves the bishop, and he's got to pay for it somehow. I'm assuming by losing this rook. Somebody comment down below, how does he lose the rook? Or what's the tactic that I'm missing here? We got rook takes. Bishop d5 was apparently great. Rook back, bishop takes, bishop g3, didn't like it. Bishop back. These were all even moves. Even, Steven. So far, so good. Rook takes d4 was great. He made a mistake. I made a mistake by taking a pawn. He made the best move, b4. It still says that we're even, though. King c3, rook f3. Okay, apparently moving the king back was losing, right, because of rook to b3. What? Rook to b3 was a blunder? Then why was it losing? Okay, if rook to b3 was a blunder, why is king to b2 losing? a4, wow. Okay, so first he cements the pawn, and then he wants to give check and pick up the pawn. Interesting. Rook to b3 was not the way to do that, but it was the way he did it. We pick up f6, king back, rook to h6. This is a missed win, right? Because he actually played this idea anyways with a4. right? And then at this point, we're basically drawn until the end of the game. Bishop c4, we pick up the pawn, check, but it's not enough. We just play this out, and all of this is a draw right up until the very end. Wait a second. Okay, this puts me at minus 0.6. And it's a draw anyways. Right? And it looks like we played everything out pretty normally. Everything else was basically fine. It's giving us minor, dubious, good, great, best. But the truth is eval is minus 0.04, and there's no way for the engine to break through here. So we skedaddle all the way until he sacrifices his rook, and we end up in a draw. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did, and I will see you guys in the next one.